resulting in the potential loss of 2,800 jobs. Those are the headlines from the newsroom. I'll be back at 9 o'clock with another update. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Mark.
Well, a busy morning for Mrs. Starmer, the leader of the opposition's wife, who hit John Lewis early to measure up red curtains for number 10. Yes, Labour has won control of a string of councils across England and Wales. Among the key council gains, Labour took Rushmore in Hampshire, which is bluer than a Roy Chubby Brown stand-up routine, and a council which the Tories have run since Mick Jagger was a virgin. The real headache for Rishi Sunak is that 6 areas that overwhelmingly voted leave in the Brexit referendum swung back to Labour, including Hartlepool, Peterborough and Thurrock. And Labour won Blackpool South in the by-election, with an eye-watering 26% swing. Normally, Tory High Command quite like middle-class swingers, but not today. But it seems that those who voted Labour did so without any great enthusiasm. Yes, Rishi Sunak is beginning to look like a species so extinct David Attenborough will make a documentary about him. But replacing Sunak with Starmer is like replacing your rubbish boyfriend with someone even worse, someone with tattoos who rides a motorbike and still lives with his mother. And looking behind the headlines, it's not all great news for Labour. Turnout across the board was anemically low. Where is the fervour, the excitement about a Labour government that we saw in 1997 before the Blair landslide? Other smaller parties did well, particularly the Greens, God help us, and the Liberal Democrats. Remember them? The other winners were independent candidates, proving that much of the public have had enough of everyone. Forget about Tory or Labour. Just the word politician is a turn-off for many. Labour have also been stung by their support for Israel following the October the 7th attacks. Labour saw support dip in some of its traditional heartland areas, with large Muslim populations losing seats in Newcastle and overall control in Oldham. The British Muslim vote is going to be a key electoral factor in the years ahead. And what about Reform UK? Well, as predicted, they've made things worse for the Tories, as election guru Sir John Curtis points out in The Telegraph today. In those areas where Reform fielded a candidate, the Conservative vote fell more quickly than Harry Kane in the penalty box. But whilst things look terminal for Rishi Sunak, let me issue a word of caution. Turnout was low, which means it's all to play for among the don't-knows. In fact, a don't-know Prime Minister leading a don't-know government made up of don't-know MPs would be the most popular administration in 100 years. But here's the point. Governments generally lose by-elections, and whilst local elections should be about potholes, street lighting and bins, they often serve as a chance to give the incumbent a bloody nose. Now, of course, the Tories have suffered more than a bloody nose, but in a few months' time, when the country goes to the polls, will support for Reform UK fall away? And will moderate-minded and undecided voters balk at the idea of listening to Sir Keir Starmer wang on for 5 years? On paper, the Tories face certain defeat at the next election, but the scale of that defeat is yet to be decided. I'd never met a Sir Keir Starmer fan. So why are the Tories standing by and letting him scoop the top prize? Stop the boats, tackle the NHS, sort out that waiting list, turn the economy around, and anything is possible. But right now, those red curtains are heading straight for number 10, unless the Tories pull themselves together. TV news legend Nicholas Owen, ex-BBC radio superstar Liz Kershaw, and the founder of the electoral calculus, Martin Baxter, are my Friday friends. Martin Baxter, What's the headline from today's
I think the headline
results?
is that Labour have got a very large amount of grudging support. Earlier when you mentioned what drinks Labour should be having, I think it's probably not good enough for champagne, but certainly Prosecco.
Right.
And the Conservatives, at the worst, it could have been tap water. I think they get an upgrade to filtered tap water.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as bad as it could have been for the Conservatives and not quite as good as it could have been for Labour.
Yeah, well, the Tories have got themselves in hot water with red wine in the past, so best to stick to the tap water, or maybe the slimline tonic. The bottom line is that you mentioned people have begrudgingly voted Labour in the last 24 hours. I do not feel that this is 1997 and the excitement around Tony Blair.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
that could be right.
In other words,
could be right.
In other words, the Pope's a Catholic. Bears relieve themselves in the wood. So, do you think if you're Rishi Sunak sat in your number 10 office tonight, is there a chink of hope for him?
There's two chinks, I suppose. A lot of his voters haven't gone to Labour as such. They've gone over to Reform and or the Apathy Party. If he can pull those back, if he can make people think there's a reason to vote Conservative, then there could be hope. The overall figures from the local elections were not as bad as they could have been, and so there's a little bit of hope, or at least that it's not a catastrophe coming down the track. But how does he win back disgruntled Conservatives? Because he's been trying for a year and he's not got very far.
Nicholas Owen.
Well, yes, a lot of traditional Tory voters probably not voting at all, isn't it, judging by those figures today? Do you not
Yes,
think?
lots of Conservative supporters staying at home.
Yeah.
And they will vote Conservative in November, won't they, Nicholas? They're not going to vote for Keir Starmer?
I would have thought they would vote. This is not to say I agree entirely that Keir Starmer's the next PM. Let's get used to that idea. But it's not quite as disastrous for the Tories, certainly as Labour would like to make out, as ever.
No, Liz Kershaw. Labour did well yesterday, but could have done better.
Today.
Well, yeah, with the votes yesterday and the results today.
Sorry, yeah. Well, a couple of things. First of all, as you mentioned, the word kicking. I was brought up in a household where my mum was a councillor for 50 years, and it was just received wisdom that she was Labour. If the Tories were in government, you'd not win. You'd lose seats in Rochdale and vice versa. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think only 30% of the boroughs were voting for councillors yesterday. I know all we could vote for in Leafy, Northamptonshire, was a new police and crime commissioner. More on that exciting result later. Yeah, and also people vote with their hearts in a by-election, in local elections like this,
and by-elections, perhaps.
Yeah, but when it comes to who's going to be in government, and they go in the box, the booth, and the pencil and piece of paper, it's all about the wallet. It's the economy, stupid. And they'll just, people be shy Tories or whatever, but I think at the end of the day, if inflation's going in the right direction, and we get a few people on a plane to Rwanda, agree with it or not, it'll be a major symbolic event, then I think that people will come out. I mean, as you said, more Conservatives stayed at home yesterday than voted for Reform, than switched to Reform. Yeah. People just decided it wasn't worth it. I've never seen our village all so deserted.
Is that right?
And by the way, it was a bit ridiculous. I've lived there 31 years. It's a population of 1,200. Passport, please. And this guy that's known me for 30-odd years studied this passport and then kept... I was like, oh, come on.
You know why he studied it?
Why?
Because your mugshot is so beautiful. And he couldn't take his eyes off it.
Hey.
Because nothing beats Liz Kershaw in a photo booth. Yeah. Nicholas.
Yes. Now, there's a couple of results still to come, which are crucial to this whole thing, I think.
Northamptonshire Crime Commissioner.
Who are you getting? Inspector Clouseau?
That's very important. But let's see. Sadiq Khan in London.
Oh, yeah.
How's he going to get on? That's going to.
Oh, and Andy Street in West Midlands.
And Andy Street in the
Now,
West
there
Midlands.
are noises.
Exactly.
There are noises that Susan Hall is doing better than expected, and that Khan is under pressure numbers-wise.
Yeah,
Don't know if that's wishful thinking or not. We won't find out till tomorrow.
Any clues on that at all?
There's some suggestive turnout figures that turnout's a bit higher in the outer boroughs than the inner boroughs. And the outer boroughs, obviously, a bit more ULEZ worried about Sadiq Khan.
Of course,
which, of course, we saw in Uxbridge when the Tories hung on to that seat.
Yeah.
Indeed. But the race is not always to the swift nor the battle to the strong, but that's the way to bet. And so I'd still bet on Sadiq Khan, but it might be closer than people think.
And Ben Houchin getting it, that was a stunner, wasn't it?
Whereas Andy Street in the West Midlands is more of a could go either way, because he's personally popular there, and the Gaza Muslim voter issue plays against Labour, as we saw.
Well, this is a new headache for Keir Starmer, a new electoral constituency that he had taken for granted, which was the British Muslim vote, Nicholas.
Yes, that's absolutely that. Was it Rochdale, I think, isn't it? Where
Labour's lost Oldham, but they've lost seats in Rochdale.
I know this place as well. That is going to be a very, very difficult situation for them.
I mean, one thing that worries me, Nicholas Owen, is actually the idea of a Labour government with a very slim majority, because I think that would place power in the hands of the likes of Diane Abbott, potentially, John McDonnell, Richard Bergen, Rebecca Long-Bailey. The Corbynites would be sort of the ERG times 100 for a Labour government, wouldn't they?
Well, I don't know about that. There's also the other view, which I'd be interested to hear what people think, that even with a very, very big majority, that also makes trouble, because people think, we can get on, we can have all our plots, and it's not, we're not going to topple the Prime Minister or anything, but we can make life very difficult for him. Trade unions out there expecting to get their dividend from when a Labour government comes in. All sorts of big sort of outside forces are going to come to bear on Keir Starmer when he's Prime Minister.
Would you agree with that, Liz?
Well, I think the big issue here is we can tinker about with it, who lost so many seats in Oldham or gained them or whatever happened in Teesside. The big thing going on, and you mentioned powerful forces, is that our democracy is under attack. 2 reasons. George Galloway is the most dangerous man in Britain. He is harvesting support for another nation's business, is using ideology as a weapon, is using race. I'm talking very personal now because I come from Rochdale, and he's putting neighbour against neighbour, and he's dividing, like, number 35 is a Tory, I won't speak to her. It's race. And
because you think he's leveraging the British Muslim vote?
Of course he is. And the British Muslim vote, which used to go to Labour, I know that from my mum's days, canvassing or what have you, because the Labour Party represented working people who were being exploited in factories or whatever. Now, it's a different matter because the communities are being whipped up to invest more in what's going on at the far end of the Mediterranean than they are in Rochdale. So that's the first thing. And the second one is intimidation of MPs. Why is it that 70, I think around 70 so far, Tory MPs are leaving before the next election? Yeah. It's not because they think, we're going to lose.
No.
People have faced that forever.
Politicians always back themselves.
They are being... I went out for a coffee with an MP the other day because I wanted to support something he was fighting for, and he told me that he gets bomb threats, he gets personal threats, 2 or 3 a week, to himself, his family, his constituency office, and also the other problem... If he tries to get something done in the city he represents, nobody in the council offices will cooperate with them because it's this left-wing enclave, a groupthink, and they just refuse to deal with it because he's a Tory.
It's chilling. And you're right to mention the MPs who are afraid to do their job. Look at Mike Freer, the MP for Golders Green in North London, who's stepping down because of death threats. Look, George Galloway is not here to defend himself. He would argue he's been duly elected. He enjoys popular support, and he wants to end the carnage in Gaza, but it's all about opinions. Next up is Rishi Sunak's goose. Now cooked? If so, who replaces him before the election? And is Nigel Farage Sir Keir Starmer's #1 political asset? We'll debate that next.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Now, American actress Melissa McCarthy has spoken out in defence of her best friend Meghan Markle, calling her an inspiring woman suffering hate for getting on with her life. And the Duchess of Sussex has faced widespread criticism after she sent 50 friends and influencers gift-wrapped jam jars to celebrate the launch of the first product of a new brand, American Riviera Orchard. Well, let's speak now to a great friend of the show, the former BBC Royal correspondent and a man who likes his jam, Michael Cole. Michael, the absurdity continues. What's the latest?
Good afternoon, Martin. Yeah, the plot thickens even as the jam sets. This has become a major story. Even the great Financial Times took an interest at the weekend, helpfully pointing out that you can get a jar of Duchy organic strawberry jam for £2.80 at a well-known supermarket. Now, Duchy Organic, the proprietor of that, of course, is His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, Prince William, the older brother of Prince Harry. And here we see it, American Riviera Orchard Montecito jam. We're getting here, this is getting very serious. And of course, her mates, she's got some interesting friends. Melissa McCarthy, who is an actress in something I've never heard of. But anyway, she says sticking up for good old Meghan, and Meghan's a woman of her own. And she, there we are seeing Miss McCarthy. But other friends of the great Meghan have taken a contrary view and think that going down this route of selling jam is not going to get her anywhere in life.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll be discussing Nigel Farage in just a moment, but first, is Rishi Sunak's goose now cooked? Should the Tories chuck him out? And if so, who replaces him? Well, let's get reaction from my Friday friends. Yes, my Friday A-team of TV news legend Nicholas Owen, ex-BBC radio superstar Liz Kershaw when the Beeb was brilliant, and the founder of Electoral Calculus, the man with the biggest poll in the building, Martin Baxter. Martin, what do you think? A change at the top, does that fix the Tories' problems?
I think Conservatives would be bull-goose crazy to change the Prime Minister at this stage. That all the polling evidence suggests that every time they change the leader, it gets worse. And if they want to get down to 0 seats, then just change the leader every month until December, and that's the way to do it. So if they'd stuck with Boris Johnson, I think they might well be in a better place now than they are.
Yeah,
would you agree with that, Liz Kershaw?
Yeah, because Boris Johnson was elected by the membership in the due fashion, the proper fashion, and then he was ousted by a coup and a load of cooked-up charges. Well, they weren't cooked up. He did stand in a room where there was a cake and possibly a sandwich and a warm glass of Prosecco. Whether or not he drank it was never proved in court. But anyway, he was elected. And one of the reasons that I think so many Conservatives will have stayed at home yesterday is because they're just disgusted. Because then what happened, Liz Truss was elected and she had to resign. But then, it was just another coup, in slipped Rishi Sunak, not democratically elected, and people are just fed up with it. So I think it's a real dilemma, because I think even his own constituents hate Rishi Sunak. Hate's perhaps a strong word.
That's a very strong word.
Because
he was quite a popular local MP.
The new mayor of North Yorkshire, County Town, North Allerton, his constituency is Labour, and I just saw that and I was astonished this tea time. I thought, how can such a beautiful and fabulously wealthy part of England all suddenly decide to vote Labour?
You have to wonder. Nicholas Owen, the Tories have nothing to lose, so getting rid of Rishi is a no-brainer, isn't it?
Oh, no, there's no question at all they're going to do that. No way, as you say. It will be absolute madness.
But if you know, Armageddon is certain, why not?
Well, I think...
Kitchen sink time, surely.
No, I think no question at all that Sunak will lead them into the election. I was interested. You said December. Did you? Was that just a thought? Do you think they'll really play the game that long?
Who can say? Perhaps a friend of mine said that perhaps Sunak wants to be Prime Minister for at least 2 years, and that would take it to...
Obviously, you've got a sort of target.
To November.
If I get through this...
I've been told October.
Yeah.
Before...
Would a November poll give him 2 years as Prime Minister?
I think so.
So, but why do you reject the idea of replacing Sunak so readily, Nicholas, given the fact that the writing's on the wall?
Well, I think, as you say, it would be absolutely crazy. First of all, the steam has gone out of the idea of there being a rebellion among Conservative MPs.
Apparently, they're getting drunk tonight, according to the Guido Fawkes website.
Is that right? Yeah.
Although that doesn't really make much of a difference.
Politicians getting drunk, that is a shocking story.
I like the idea of a new PM, in leathers on a motorbike with tattoos, and then you went and spoiled it by mentioning Keir Starmer. I was thinking, who is this hero?
You were quite excited about the new boyfriend.
I was going to vote for him.
Yeah, so you don't think you're certain that Sunak fights the next election?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But what's the point in that?
Well, I mean, because I think he's not going to turn around and say, "OK, guys, we're throwing in the towel now." Is he? Come on, no way, no politician ever does that at all. Things can change quite quickly. I don't think it's going to be a huge... We're talking about a huge Labour majority. I don't think it's going to be that huge, frankly. I think things could change quite quickly here. And when it comes to election, people focus on absolutely different things, do they not? We're all talking as if the very thing that we're told not to do, which is draw enormous lessons from local elections. And we're always told that's the wrong thing to do, and here we are all doing it like
Martin.
I think there's two reasons why he's not going to go. The first one is, when you say there's nothing to lose, there absolutely is something to lose. The Conservatives might win 100 to 200 seats under Sunak. If they change leader again, they could win so few seats that they aren't even the opposition. Ed Davey could be the leader of the opposition if the Tories mess up further. The second big reason is that there's no obvious successor. That when Theresa May had problems, Boris Johnson was an obvious success, and we saw it in the polling that he was very popular with the public. The Conservatives do not have a Boris Mark II around at the moment to take the helm.
Martin, full disclosure, I am a Sunak Spartan. I called for him to be Prime Minister in January of 2021. And I think that he's an underrated Prime Minister. I think he's quietly and slowly working his way through the problems in the country. He ended the Brexit deadlock in Northern Ireland with the Windsor framework. The proof that that has been successful is that we have power sharing in Stormont. The DUP are on board. Inflation is coming down. We had the shallowest of recessions. Interest rates will hopefully creep down later in the year. I think he's a good Prime Minister. Could that help him in a few months' time?
Not on the basis of today or the opinion polls.
But the public aren't stupid, are they? Can't they see that Sunak was handed a difficult set of cards?
Well, I think the public may agree with some of the things Liz was saying, that they voted for Boris, they had Boris taken away, they've had another Prime Minister they didn't vote for since. The economy is not doing well, many things are not doing well. It feels like a sea change moment.
But what about this choice between Starmer and Sunak? In our increasingly presidential system, is that not something that will factor into the end result? The fact that there are no big, great cheerleaders for Starmer out there, only people fed up with the Tories?
But I turn that around and say there's not big cheerleaders out for Sunak either. They're much of a muchness in that sense. Neither one's got a big advantage over the other. Starmer has the advantage that he's not been in power for 14 years.
Yeah. Briefly, Liz?
There's just nobody big, is there? They're both shorties, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, and they've got your choice between a bloke whose suits don't fit him and a bloke who wears pumps to go up north and a hoodie because he thinks he's going to be down with the working
and drinks
classes.
tea.
Oh, yeah. And a pint. Didn't he have a pint when he went before, or was that Ed Miliband and a bacon butter?
He's pint-sized.
Yeah.
Nicholas, briefly, before we get on to Nigel Farage, I happen to think that shares in Rishi Sunak are too low and that shares in Keir Starmer are too high. Am I deluded?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I agree with absolutely what you said. I think Sunak, I think things are beginning to turn round. A lot of things, frankly, that, inflation, well, it's nothing to do with politicians, really, but he will reap the benefits of that eventually.
I think he's very hard-working and diligent and applied and beavering away behind the scenes. I don't think his comms are very good.
No. People can see that he's rolled his sleeves up and he's getting on with the job.
Chipping away at it.
Hang on a minute. The exact opposite of Boris. Exact opposite of Boris. Chaotic, couldn't do anything right.
Boris, Boris was a leader. Boris was charismatic. If we'd had all that lockdown rubbish and, COVID and everything else with Theresa May as Prime Minister, oh, my God, this nation would have been miserable.
You're quite right.
He kept us jolly.
Most definitely.
And he might have been...
Still be. Most definitely. Well, that is half the battle, isn't it? Speaking of jolly, let's talk about Nigel Farage. Now, Reform UK kept their promise and demonstrated that they are indeed a thorn in the side to the Tories. Although, as predicted and based upon last night's local election results, any success they have will all but guarantee a Labour government. It's strange that a party of the right, with a far more conservative policy offering than the actual Tories, should be so enthusiastic about installing Sir Keir Starmer into number 10 for 5 years with a bumper majority. In fact, the man who set up the party, the formidable Nigel Farage, told me on this channel 3 months ago that we might have Labour in office for 10 years. Reform UK risks falling between two stools, damaging the Conservatives but not fatally, keeping them out of power but not winning seats or gaining power themselves. Eviscerating the Tories only to see Sir Keir Starmer running the country for a decade sounds like a hollow victory to me. What is Reform UK for, if not to ensure that a fiscally and socially conservative party is in power? If Nigel Farage is expecting a possible decade of Labour rule, when exactly will Reform UK start winning seats and form a government? Pop starlet Taylor Swift will be drawing her state pension by the time that happens. Now, I'm an admirer of those involved in the Reform UK project, and plenty of their policies make sense. But other than their stated objective to nuke the Tories, their wider plan doesn't add up. If Nigel Farage takes a frontline role and becomes leader of the party, then yes, their support will grow. But the irony is that the stronger Reform UK become, the larger a Labour majority becomes as well. Reform UK voters, many of whom watch and listen to this channel, detest everything about the Labour Party and particularly Sir Keir Starmer. And yet their support for this insurgent force only guarantees him more years in power. Nicholas Owen, Nigel Farage is Keir Starmer's greatest political ally.
Yeah, the analysis was great, actually. I loved it. I just think that if you look back in history, all this business about parties rise, UKIP rose, weren't they saying the same things about that? And UKIP, I think, at the same stage, was doing rather better. Am I right?
Is that right, Martin? I think that at this stage, that UKIP had more
UKIP
presence.
did very well in European elections.
But remember those.
But neither UKIP nor Reform are very big at running in local council elections.
Well, they got 4 million votes in the general election, didn't they? Without even achieving
but
one.
But it makes you wonder quite what their
there.
strategy is. Are they trying to replace the Conservatives, in which case you want to do what the Lib Dems do and run lots of candidates locally and build up support and overtake the Conservatives in a way like Labour did overtook the Liberal Party at the start of the 20th century? Or are they slightly confused and they think they're in America, that Farage can run as the Conservative candidate for president and win the primary vote. But that isn't how the system works here.
Listen, the most important thing with the two parties that have dominated politics in this country since, what, 1900, whatever it was, when the Liberals finally fell away, the Conservatives and Labour, is that they are both, I hate these political cliches, but it's true, isn't it? Broad churches. Broad churches. Reform, you may love this party, but it's only about sort of one set of right-wing, dare I say it, policies, isn't it? Population won't go for that at a general election. I'm just absolutely certain of that. The way that Starmer has pulled his party together away back from the sort of crazy Corbyn years and so on, and the Tories represent this enormous broad thing. That is what people, when they sit down in a polling booth, stand in the polling booth, show their passport, which I think you had a bit of trouble with today. They didn't believe you were who you said you were.
Just over diligent and vigilant.
In rural Northamptonshire. I'm very sorry about that. But you go in and you put your cross. Are you going to say to yourself, oh, yes, they're really going to be tough on immigration? Yeah, but what are they going to do about the housing problems that young people face? What are they actually going to do about inflation? That's what matters. Sure.
Well, yes, and Martin, again, the British people are not stupid, and when it comes to the election, they look at the reform option and they'll think, well, I agree with those policies. I love Nigel Farage. I admire Richard Tice. But they're not going to win in this area, so it's got to be Tory.
Well, they will, and the Conservatives will bang the drum for that message, I guess. But against that, you get people either not voting, ex-Conservatives or Reform voters who say the Conservative Party is not Conservative anymore. It's Conservative in name only. And why should I vote for them? Why should I get Labour policies from a so-called Conservative government? I'm going to vote for.
But how many people, Martin, are going to vote Labour because the Tories aren't Conservative enough? Make it make sense.
Some voters are voting Green because Labour are not left-wing enough. So Keir Starmer has a little bit of problem on his left flank, but it's much smaller than the Conservatives' problem on their right flank.
Fascinating debate. Martin, can I thank you for coming in? Really enjoyed your input. Martin Baxter there, who is a top polling expert. He's the founder of the Electoral Calculus, and of course he will be returning to the channel as we build up excitement around the next general election. Delighted to hang on to Nicholas Owen and Liz Kershaw. We've got lots to get through coming up as voters at Milton Road Library in Cambridge had to get into a Nissan Leaf car in order to cast their vote yesterday. Is Britain now a failed state? Also, is Emmanuel Macron right that Brexit's been bad for the UK? We'll discuss that and much, much more. See you in 2.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mixed May Day bank holiday weekend. Some places having warm sunshine, but there will be a fair few showers around as well. Had a real mixed picture today. Cracking day in western Scotland, dull and damp over these central areas. The rain here slowly edging northwards. Clearer skies in the south. Going to allow it to turn quite chilly, actually. May not be far off freezing in some rural parts of the south, whereas the cloud and the rain over northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland will keep the temperatures up in double digits here. It does make for a pretty dismal start to the long weekend. A lot of cloud and rain and drizzle on and off through the day. Northeast England may well brighten up. A much brighter day tomorrow for the Midlands, East Anglia and many southern counties of England and Wales. Fine tomorrow with some sunny spells. And again, the west coast of Scotland doing OK for sunshine. Not quite as warm as today, but 17, 18 likely here. Cool on some of these North Sea coasts, particularly in the far northeast where it stays fairly murky. That's going to be an issue, I think, on Sunday as well. Mist and low cloud around the coast in the northeast. Could be some heavy showers developing through the day over central and eastern Scotland. But again, many areas fine on Sunday, some spells of sunshine, increasing chance of seeing cloud and showers coming up from the south. But with a bit of sunshine, temperatures getting into the high teens once more. That'll feel pretty pleasant. So a brighter day on Sunday, certainly across northern England. We'll keep that mixture of some places staying fine and sunny on Monday, but there will still be some showers around.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A sign, if you needed it, of broken Britain, as voters at Milton Road Library in Cambridge had to get into a Nissan Leaf car, which is an electric car, it had probably broken down, in order to cast their vote. It's enough to drive you round the bend. Is Britain becoming a failed state? Liz Kershaw.
Well, I wish the trains could run on time, and they're going to be on. They're running late today. Maybe it's the weather. They're going to be on strike from Monday. Go slows at Heathrow Airport.
Terrible.
Smart motorways. They're not, are they?
Not
you know,
really.
Just try get into your show on a Friday night.
Well, you said that you like doing this show.
I love it. Could you move it?
Nightmare.
Could you move it to Wednesday?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's move the weekend forward.
And move it to Milton Keynes, I think is where you would like it to be.
Well, listen, it's a funny story, but listen, who cares by which means we vote? All that matters is we have the franchise.
Yes, thank goodness
And
for
when
that.
needs must. I mean, that was just British resourcefulness, wasn't it? Using a Nissan?
Absolutely extraordinary. I don't know about that. Why a Nissan Leaf? I mean, they all had to sort of climb the front seat, the back seat. I mean, what was that all about?
Yeah, well, I think they got the people who voted to push it in the end because it had run out of battery. But listen, well done to those in Cambridge that managed to have a polling station so that democracy could prevail. Now, France's Emmanuel Macron has said that Brexit has impoverished the UK, and he's warned populist leaders in Europe to pipe down, saying that they are all closet Brexiteers. Well, that's quite the flex for Macron to claim that Brexit has been bad for the UK. Since the pandemic, Britain has largely avoided recession, unlike France, Germany and the Eurozone. Our national debt is a fraction of France's, as is the UK rate of unemployment. Forget about those famous 3-hour lunch breaks. These days, the French never go to work. Oh, and it was earlier this year that Britain leapfrogged France, leapfrogged, no pun intended, to become number 8 in the world for manufacturing. The lesson of Brexit is the opposite, Mr. Macron. In fact, if France are to blossom economically, have control of their borders and save vast monthly payments so that they can eat croissant instead, they should get out as well and bring back the French franc. When France had the French franc, their pop music was so much better. Remember Vanessa Paradis, Jo le Taxi? Taxi for Mr. Macron. Their cars were better too. Look at this funky Citroën. And their most famous actor, Gérard Depardieu, behaved like an absolute angel around women. He was such a good boy then. Frexit is coming. That's right, Frexit is coming. You heard it here first. Will the last person to leave the EU please remember to switch the lights out? Au revoir, Brussels. What do you think, Liz Kershaw? I mean, you've got strong thoughts about Emmanuel Macron, haven't you?
I have, but, you know, I had a little bit of a le titre this week because the new...
Family show, I beg your pardon. We've all had a drink, Liz.
Chuckle. The new French dictionary was out.
Don't Google le titre.
And I remember there being a great thing when I was doing French A-level. Our French teacher was really disgusted that le chewing-gum, chewing gum, had made it into the French language. Anyway.
Oh, no.
Now, guess what's now in the new French dictionary? Beyoncé.
Is that right? That's French as well.
She's got in because she had French Creole heritage, and it means above and beyond the rest. So that's in. Also, le click and collect.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, I
so
love
they
it.
hate all this.
We basically won.
So they hate all this. So
the Germans have das Marketing.
Yeah.
Classics. About the only German word you can actually pronounce.
Yeah, but so he's up against. We could say, oh, our culture's invading yours, but he's said some sensible things in the last week, and things that need saying. Looking at the bigger picture, he said Europe is under threat existentially, culturally. Security-wise, he said, we've got to stop buying oil and gas off Russia. We've got to stop using China to outsource all our manufacturing. We've got to stop just taking for granted and relying on the Americans to defend us. We've got to start flying the flag and saying, made in Europe. Well, that's radical, isn't it? We've been saying that for about 30 years. You know, it's such a short-term solution to get stuff made so cheap in China, which it's not anymore because their economies, people have got richer there. But, yeah, so good for him. So he's a bit pompous and he's trying to style himself as the president of Europe, I think. But he is trying to be the statesman and he's trying to say... I think the Brexit is a side issue. Basically, come on, lads, come back. We need you. You've got your defence mechanisms, your missiles as well, your nuclear subs. Let's, strengthen numbers. Let's all stick together because we shouldn't be fighting amongst ourselves. We should be defending this Europe against the rest of the world.
Most definitely. Nicholas?
Yeah, OK, defending, getting together with us on migration, immigration and all those boats across the Channel. Can he persuade those policemen on the French beaches actually get up and do a day's work?
Well, they've been doing more. They've been slashing boats and spraying tear gas, haven't they?
And escorting boats across the Channel as well.
Yes, well, that's maritime law, isn't it? You've got to be careful there. But anyway, the thing about Macron is he got Le Pen and whoever the current... Is it Marine? I forget.
Marine Le Pen,
or a sister or a cousin or...
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously the daughter of the
dad.
Le Pen. No, what was it?
Le Grand Le Pen.
Yeah,
exactly. But he's got that to worry about. I mean, that's what he's really up against. Much the same sort of forces that are at work here. And so that's what he's...
But this was naked politics, wasn't it? To attack Britain and say we've been impoverished by Brexit. Yeah. Even the archest Remainer couldn't say that.
No, everything in France...
Nicholas?
Well, yes, I'm sorry. We've discussed this before.
Go on.
I'm afraid I'm not with you on this. I do think this country has suffered as a result of Brexit.
Impoverished, Nicholas Owen?
Yeah, I think so, to some extent. Yeah, I think it has. It's certainly narrowed us down as the focus of things. We got all these things people coming up who seem to, frankly, think, everything sort of has to be concentrated on this country, ignore our closest neighbours and all the other things. What did people voted Brexit for? They voted for Brexit because they thought it would put an end to illegal immigration.
No.
People thought that.
No. You know why I voted Brexit? Because I thought, like Macron, I thought Europe is imploding and all great civilisations eventually do. And I'm getting off this sinking ship. I'm staying on the lifeboat of the British Isles.
Fascinating. Last word, Nicholas.
Well, I don't think a lot of people would agree with you. Poland, for example, saying they're going to overtake the UK in terms of GDP and everything else. I'm sorry, I do not think that Brexit has done this country any favours.
There you go. Listen, let me tell you.
GBNews listeners and viewers.
No. Listen, half our viewers would agree with you. And Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan is the home of diverse opinion. Lots more to come. Poor old Prince Harry won't be staying at Buckingham Palace when he visits the UK next week. Should he go budget and stay in a Premier Inn? Find out about Harry's travel plans and his glorious return to Britain next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The biggest of occasions for England's smallest county. In Rutland, there isn't a single statue. Now there shall be, of one of the most important people in British history, the late Queen. Lord Lieutenant Sarah Furness represents the monarch in the county.
Her Majesty provided us all with a sense of stability and continuity. As head of state, she gave us national identity.
Raising £140,000 in donations, mostly from individuals, the statue in the town of Oakham is the first of its kind to be unveiled since the death of Queen Elizabeth. Howell Pratley is the sculptor.
I am a big fan of public sculpture, being integral to, a friendly, caring community.
Young and old are lining the streets to catch a glimpse of the 7-foot statue, including 89-year-old Joyce Lucas in the front row.
We met her on several occasions in Oakham, and we've got some lovely photographs and lovely, lovely memories. She is the Queen. She was great. She was brilliant, and we miss her.
The Queen's death broke the nation's heart. Her memorial is filling Rutland with pride. Her image, taken from early middle age, set in bronze.
It's a real fitting tribute to the late Queen.
I think it captures our late Majesty's humanity, but also she looks so regal.
Absolutely beautiful.
Queen Elizabeth was Britain's longest reigning monarch. Her reign was great, unlikely to be matched by future king or queen. A legacy of unwavering service recorded in a place of permanent remembrance. Will Hollis, GB News in Oakham.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Poor old Prince Harry won't be staying at Buckingham Palace when he visits the UK next week. Should he go budget and stay in a Premier Inn? Well, let's discuss that. This is an issue for Prince Harry because he's on his way over to the UK. When he touches down in Sadiq Khan's lawless London, he'll no doubt be mugged for his watch, wallet and phone before he steps off the Heathrow Express. Now, I happen to think that Harry should have full royal protection because it wasn't his choice to be the King's son, but that's not the view of the courts, who have ruled out his request for armed cops. But the Prince's worries don't stop there. We're hearing that Harry will not be accommodated at Buckingham Palace, even though it's emptier than a branch of Wilko's. So, where is he going to stay? The Ritz? The Dorchester? Well, his media gigs are drying up, so he might have to go budget. He might like the Premier Inn, where he can bunk up with the face of that hotel chain, comedian Lenny Henry. What a laugh a minute those two would make. How about a Holiday Inn Express, where he can enjoy the wide-ranging choice offered by the vending machine if he gets peckish in the middle of the night? And I'm delighted to say that Britain's favourite pub chain, JD Wetherspoons, now have rooms available in some of their venues. The Hotel Wetherspoons, where you can check out any time you like, but you can't leave until you've drunk 12 pints of old speckled hen and got into a fight with an off-duty electrician. If Harry times it right, he could be at his Wetherspoons hotel just in time for Curry Thursday, chicken tikka masala and a pint for under a tenner in the company of some common-sense Brexit-supporting customers. Yes, if 24 hours in a Wetherspoons doesn't reverse Harry's woke brainwashing, nothing will. Prince Harry's budget tour to the UK might just be the making of him. Nicholas Owen, do you think that he should be accommodated in the palace? There are plenty of spare room.
No, I don't think so, no. This is a family rift that's too deep for all that. No. But I do gather that he's... I mean, the real problem, isn't it, that there was some talk that he wanted to bring some of his family over. No, don't do any of that. But the king is... They're going to get together and meet and say hello to each other, but that's quite enough. No,
does it strike you as odd, though, in that capacious house, that they can't accommodate
maybe
their famous son?
I just don't think he wants to be there at all, and can't completely understand it. I mean, if you think of any other families when there's been a huge rift like this, would we want to go, oh, we're actually going to be staying round at my mother's again? No way. He won't want to do that. No.
Briefly, Liz, I quite like the sound of the Wetherspoons Hotel.
Yeah, I love that big fry-up in the morning for starters. I just think, I can imagine any family, hey, are you having our Harry staying when he comes over?
Yes,
You're joking, are you? I won't give him house room.
That's right.
And it's been really bitter and nasty, and it's made people ill, I think. And, I can't see how that can be easily healed,
So you don't think Charles should say, look, take room 377, it's all
Look,
yours.
there's big top totty from Chelsea lining up. Hello, how are you? Very well, how are you? He'll have loads of offers.
I tell you what, and so will Liz Kershaw after those brilliant impressions. Thank you to Nicholas Owen and Liz Kershaw. Well done to Aaron and George for a busy day. Yeah. I'm back tomorrow at 9. Patrick Christie's is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A mixed May Day bank holiday weekend. Some places having warm sunshine, but there will be a fair few showers around as well. Had a real mixed picture today. Cracking day in western Scotland, dull and damp over these central areas. The rain here slowly edging northwards. Clearer skies in the south. Going to allow it to turn quite chilly, actually. May not be far off freezing in some rural parts of the south, whereas the cloud and the rain over northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland will keep the temperatures up in double digits here. It does make for a pretty dismal start to the long weekend. A lot of cloud and rain and drizzle on and off through the day. Northeast England may well brighten up. A much brighter day tomorrow for the Midlands, East Anglia and many southern counties of England and Wales. Fine tomorrow with some sunny spells. And again, the west coast of Scotland doing OK for sunshine. Not quite as warm as today, but 17, 18 likely here. Cool on some of these North Sea coasts, particularly in the far northeast where it stays fairly murky. That's going to be an issue, I think, on Sunday as well. Mist and low cloud around the coast in the northeast. Could be some heavy showers developing through the day over central and eastern Scotland. But again, many areas fine on Sunday, some spells of sunshine, increasing chance of seeing cloud and showers coming up from the south. But with a bit of sunshine, temperatures getting into the high teens once more. That'll feel pretty pleasant. So a brighter day on Sunday, certainly across northern England. We'll keep that mixture of some places staying fine and sunny on Monday, but there will still be some showers around.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
I'm slipping neck. Oh dear.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're joking. Really? Seriously, it's not a wine. What is it?
Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For a chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christie's. Tonight.
GB News, off GB News, off GB News, off GB News.
The radical activists are unmasked and...
Obviously, it's disappointing to lose good, hard-working Conservative councillors, and I'm grateful to them for all their service in local government.
Why is Rishi Sunak so unpopular? Tory MP Matt Warman chimes in. Veterans were banned from voting. I've got Johnny Mercer's former boss on.
Free Palestine!
Muslim voters give Labour a kicking. How much of a concern is this?
And I say today, this is not my victory. This is Palestine innocent people victory.
On my panel, it's ex-BBC and ITV political chief John Sargent, Tory MP for Romford Andrew Rosindell, and the Apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju. Oh yes, and is this London's new mayor?
Everything the city, I'll be conquering all of them. All of them. You used to think I'm just a clown, but there to be...
Sorry, get ready, Britain, here we go. It's absolute bedlam out there. Next.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. It's just gone 9 o'clock and we start with the latest developments in the local elections today. The Conservatives are now on track for their worst set of results in 40 years. The party's lost hundreds of seats across England, with Labour, the Liberal Democrats and Independents making gains. Reform UK also put in a strong showing in the Blackpool South by-election, coming in third place. Sir Keir Starmer claims Labour's results are a direct message to the Prime Minister as he renewed demands for him to call a general election. Well, the Liberal Democrats have also made gains, with party leader Sir Ed Davey pledging to make the Conservative government history.
People from around our great country have had enough of this out-of-touch Conservative government. They've had enough of being taken for granted and being let down. It's time for change. And across this country, from Cheltenham to Dorset, from West Oxfordshire to here in Winchester, so many people, including lifelong Conservatives, are switching to the Liberal Democrats to make that change happen.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister insists that he's focusing on the job at hand after those disappointing local election results for the Conservatives. Mark, thank you Despite very much. losing control for a number of authorities, the Conservatives did hold on to the mayoral seat in Tees Valley, with Ben Houchen being re-elected there. Rishi Sunak says that result is evidence that people will stick with the Conservatives come the general election.
Keir Starmer came here twice, Rachel Reeves came here 3 times, but even they couldn't dislodge Ben and the fantastic Conservative team, right? And they also threw a lot of mud, it needs to be said, in this election, because they were angry that Ben has delivered more for this region in 7 years than Labour Party managed in 30 years.
Well, let's take a quick look at those latest council results from across England as counting continues tonight. If you're watching on TV, you can see here the number of councillors confirmed so far. Fewer than 7 councils left to declare out of a total of 107. Some will follow into tomorrow, including the West Midlands and the result for London's mayor. In other news, the family of murdered schoolboy Alfie Lewis have thanked him for making them smile every day. He was stabbed to death by another schoolboy outside a primary school in Leeds last November. That teenager, who can't be named, was 14 at the time of the attack. He admitted stabbing Alfie with a 13-centimetre long kitchen knife. The court heard in full view of other pupils, but he has denied murder. Instead, he claimed he was scared for his life when he pulled out the weapon, but that was disputed by prosecutors. We've heard today that a former solicitor has been sentenced to more than 7 years in jail for running what the judge described as a deceptive immigration scheme. Flora Mendez from Luton made up fake addresses in Grenfell Tower and charged victims £2,800 to submit fraudulent immigration applications. The 45-year-old also exploited the Windrush scheme, providing services to people without being qualified. The Indian national continued providing illegal services despite being struck off in 2015, and the judge in the case called her actions truly disgraceful, sentencing Mendez to 90 months behind bars. And finally, before we head back to Patrick, an update on the critical incident in Bristol, where a number of hospitals continue to be affected from a power outage. The local NHS trust there says the city's children's emergency department is still open, but we understand other departments aren't accepting any new patients tonight. Instead, the trust is asking those who need urgent medical help to call 111. Those are the headlines. Plenty more still to come. I'll be back at 10 o'clock. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. Now, all the news today is about the election results. Who are the winners? Who are the losers?